Well, good afternoon, comrades, and happy Saturday. Happy to see everyone virtually. Before we get started, comrades, let us take a pause for a moment to remember two of our stalwarts that left us in this life since the National Committee meeting. Comrade Jaime Cruz from DC, Maryland, and Comrade Bruce Bostick from Ohio, both long-term members of our party, 40, 50 years. Jaime from days back in the YWLL, the Young Workers Liberation League, and Bruce, from Ohio, and both of them long-term defenders of our class and people. Jaime was a Puerto Rican comrade. He was a working class intellectual of the first order. He active in the fight for Puerto Rican independence, DC statehood, any struggle that took place on behalf of the working class and the fight against racism, for women's equality, against imperialism. Jaime was there, and Comrade Bruce, a steel worker. Bruce worked at U.S. Steel in Lorain, Ohio for many years, fought against plant closing. He was a very active member and leader of the Steelworkers Retirees, well known in the labor movement in Ohio. And let us pause for a moment of silence in honor of them both. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Comrades, as we meet, as the National Committee meets today, the very center of the struggle for democracy in this country is in the Twin Cities. And that struggle took a dramatic turn a week ago, last Friday, when the people of Minneapolis and St. Paul spoke in one voice, saying no work, no school, no shopping. On that bitter cold day, in minus 15-degree weather, 75,000 marched against ICE and MAGA state terror. Can you imagine? 75,000 minus 15 degrees below. I'm starting to shiver just thinking about it. Workers stayed home, probably most. Even 700 businesses closed their doors in support of that protest. It was a veritable general strike of the people. You might even call it an all-people strike. Somebody told me that they weren't sure if it was a general strike. We were at the demonstration called by the New York Central Labor Council that very day. But I said to them, what else can you call it? Even the bourgeois press saw it. I showed them a headline from the New York Times. That headline read, quote, 200 businesses went on strike, end of quote. So I said to them, not a general strike. I mean, 200 businesses. how much more general can you get? And let's be clear, the labor movement led it. It was they who issued the call and SEIU and helped initiate the coalition of faith, community, and civil rights organizations that organized that protest. And that, comrades, changes everything. Folks, today, the single most important development in the anti-MAGA upsurge is the beginning of the entry of the trade union movement into the center of the fight back. This is what we have been hoping and fighting for. And I'll tell you something else. It's got the ruling class shaking in their boots. Don't you know? The other day, Dante sent me an open letter that some 60 Minnesota CEOs sent out talking about all the hard work they've been doing behind the scenes to calm the situation in the state. I read that thing and said to myself, what they really want to calm is their corporate profits after that strike. Can you imagine? I mean, you want calm? It's not complicated. Tell MAGA and ICE to get the hell out of that state. Open letter indeed. And even that was too late. Alex Preddy was already shot dead. First Renee Good, now Alex Preddy. These are the actions of Trump's secret police. This is state terror. This is the mass face of fascist lawlessness. And I'll tell you something else. It will only stop when the workers and people make it stop. And that is what we are here to discuss today, to do whatever we can to broaden, deepen, give support to that working class-led fight back. Comrades, to me, the main question is to support the demands of the people of Minnesota to remove ICE from their state, right? Stop the killing and prosecute those who are responsible. And when I say responsible, all the way to the top. And that means bringing maximum pressure to bear on those who hold the levers of power. That includes Congress, the White House, and most importantly, their corporate backers. We've got to call and write and petition and hold vigils, lobby, hang signs over highways, sit in, pass resolutions in our places of worship, in unions, in community organizations, occupy, strike. In other words, use all the tools in the toolbox. Now some people think that some of these are not effective means of struggle. You know, that if you lobby, if you send a letter, if you hold a vigil, if you make a phone call, that by definition, that's liberal politics. I beg to differ. what makes a tactic liberal or revolutionary is not the individual action itself, but the collective intention, and the carrying out of that action. It is the intention to bring about a reform as an end in itself, or is it a means to a greater end? And every tactic has the potential of being a means to a greater end. What greater end? Well, make people think, raise consciousness, build unity, move them into a struggle around a given set of demands. And the demands, by definition, are always a reform. But that's all right. I mean, we support reforms, but we don't leave it there. We are masters of the communist plus. We understand that the winning of a reform is not an end in itself, but a stepping stone on the road to something bigger. The winning of a demand is a means to a greater good, right? I mean, if we win ICE out, then we take that momentum and we use it to defeat those who brought ICE in. It's all about collective action. We register to vote. We recruit working class, progressive, hopefully left candidates. We take the offensive and we go after those who created the mess in the first place. We pursue, we defend. When we have to, we retreat, we advance, we prosecute the case, we fight on and on, always pointing to the systemic causes of these difficulties and the need to replace the capitalist system. That's the way we roll. That's the way we have always rolled. And what's true for the politicians is also true for their backers. And in Minnesota, we got to go after their backers. And that means going after the signers of that open letter who are working to protect their corporate profits. And one of the most notorious of them is Target. Target, as you know, has been the object of a nationwide boycott for a year now, right? This boycott began because of their about-face on DEI after Trump's election. And it's been extremely effective. Profits down, continue to drop. Efforts to shore up their business by including firing their CEO last summer and making a fresh start with a new head failed. Then came the ICE invasion of Minneapolis. And Target made the very smart business decision of allowing their stores to be a staging area for ICE operations. Smart, them corporate heads. Think about that for a minute. They went from being on front row for DEI after the George Floyd rebellion to being on front row now to cancel it for Trump. And now they're on front row assisting ICE round up our neighbors. You talk about hypocrisy. It don't get more hypocritical. And that hypocrisy did not go unnoticed. And last week, Minneapolis organizers called for actions at targets around the country, protesting their support for ICE. And clubs in Pittsburgh, Atlanta, New York, DC, Chicago, maybe some other places I don't know about, join the coalition efforts. Shouldn't our party as a whole heed the organizers' call and help initiate actions at targets around the country? We got what, 200, 250 clubs? How many can we get to participate? Will any of you pledge to do so today? It is extremely important that we take this issue up because the stakes are high. Consider, y'all, that MAGA has used DEI as an excuse to completely dismantle civil rights throughout the federal government. You know, they closed all the government civil rights offices. They fired or laid off all of their staff, you know? No enforcement mechanism. Then Trump even overturned executive orders, you know, put forward by Lyndon Baines Johnson from the 1960s prohibiting discrimination from companies receiving federal contracts. That's why we say that there has been a civil rights counter-revolution. And that counter-revolution affects us all. But that's not obvious to most because DEI and civil rights are perceived as African-American or Latino issues. And this is the case both inside the movement, including to some degree in the party, and in the broader public. But nothing could be further from the truth. Civil rights benefit everyone. You take what happened and what is happening to the Department of Education. Do you know why they dismantled it? They'll tell you that it was because the department was promoting critical race theory, or God forbid, Black, Latino, women's, LGBTQ history and studies. What they're not telling you is that, in addition, MAGA is targeting student civil rights, which is the department's main purpose. Let me tell y'all what I'm talking about. 20% of all children in this country are special needs. That's 1 in 5. 15% are special ed. The role of the Department of Education was to protect civil rights of these students, those with autism, learning disabilities, impediments, challenges, speech impediments, ADHD, MS, muscular dystrophy, cerebral palsy, spina bifida, you name it. The Department of Education set the rules of the road to ensure that a child's zip code or disability or skin color don't determine their right to an education. Now that's gone. Your child needs a ramp, disabled bathroom, special ed teacher. You want your child to be able to sit in the same classroom with other students, not be segregated? Sorry, if local schools refuse to provide these services, there's no place now for parents to appeal. And this is true, it affects all children, the majority of whom are white. Student civil rights are not a black thing or a brown thing or an Asian thing, a Middle Eastern thing. All children benefit. And now that's gone. And I tell you, DEI was the excuse that they used to get rid of it. Big setback. But, and there's an important but, the battle ain't over. Currently, the disposition of the Department of Education's $66 billion budget is being fought over in Congress. The good news is that so far, they have rebuffed cuts to special ed and other programs. The point here, of course, is that civil rights deepen democracy and benefit everyone. And it is in everyone's self-interest, period. That is why it must be defended. And that is also why we have to defend against each and every encroachment on our rights and fight for what the great Dimitrov called every inch of bourgeois democratic liberty. Every single last inch. One such democratic liberty is the right to collectively bargain. And this right was canceled on March 27th of last year by Mr. Trump for 1.3 million federal workers. Woke up one day and said, no, gone, finished. As we have said many times before, it was the greatest act of union busting in U.S. history. In fact, we said it so many times that even the New York Times is saying it now. The other day, big headline, biggest act of union busting in U.S. history. I saw that and I said, hey, they stole my headline. Be that as it may, the struggle to restore these rights is one of the greatest challenges before the labor movement today. A bill to right this wrong, the Protect America Workforce Act, passed in the House late last year and is now in the Senate. Its passing would be a stunning rebuke to Trump. However, it's pretty clear that it's going to take more than a phone call and a petition, as important as they are, and don't misunderstand me here, to make that happen. That's why we must continue our support for a labor-led National Day of Action in DC and other parts of the country as proposed by the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists. Their resolution we need to continue to push it in union halls, in places of workshop, in community organizations, among students, wherever there are people organized. The leadership of the AFL-CIO needs to hear the call loudly and clearly that they have not yet acted militantly in defense of the 1.3 million means to me that they have not heard the call loudly and clearly enough. And we got to change that. But I also kind of feel like by now, that's old news. What's new is that things are in motion. What's new is that organized labor in some places are beginning to take the fight to MAGA. They're not only joining the No Kings and other protests, but as in Minnesota and as in New York last week, labor is beginning to lead these protests. The science of class struggle requires that we keep our eye on what is new and respond to developments as they unfold, calibrating our tactics in time and in tune with the needs of each moment. You know, the working class comes to its own conclusion at its own pace. Life is the great teacher. It is lived experience that shapes social consciousness, right? We saw that in the Twin Cities, that when confronted with an invasion of 3,000 fascist goons who shot in cold blood two of its best sons and daughters, the labor movement rose up and showed its organized might. Yeah, labor is beginning to move. On February 7th, AFL-CIO, supported by CBTU, AFL-CIO, United States Student Association, and many others have called a young workers' march in DC, demanding a living wage, health care, child care, affordable housing, and education without debt. The call is starting to be heard and is starting to be answered. And Cameron tells me that UAW in Detroit is sending a bus. We need to be there as well. To take a step back, yesterday, there were calls, as you know, for an economic blackout and strikes. And in many places around the country, people demonstrated, including walkouts by high school students, setting aside for a moment the call for a general strike. The fact is, people are angry and want to do something, and that is what is important. On March 28th, the third No Kings demonstration will take place all over the country, along with what they're calling a landmark event in the Twin Cities. Now, February is a short month, and March will quickly be upon us. So let's start, comrades, getting our contingents ready. And as we prepare, our Political Action Commission, Joel and them, are sure to keep us busy with the weekly rapid response initiatives that focus on our attention on the main struggles that are occurring across a rapidly changing political terrain. Speaking of which, the upcoming midterms will soon be front and center. And it goes without saying that for the next several months, they will occupy a place at the top of our agenda. To get ready, we are planning an all-party national election conference in May that, while focused on the contest for Congress, must also address running our own candidates for local office. It is a heavy load in front of us. I mean, heavy. And of course, we wish we could do more. And the times dictate that we should do more. But we have to do what we can while taking pains to improve our work, stay in touch with district and club leaders, gauge what is happening on the ground, and respond to it quickly in real time. And take initiative, comrades. Build coalition with others. As Bobby Seale used to say, seize the time. Why is that important? Because if you don't take initiative, if you always wait to see what others are doing, you'll always end up tailing events. The point is to take such initiative in a broad way. This is important not only with respect to ICE deployments around the country, but also in response to U.S. imperialism's newfound appetite for military intervention in other countries. Humanity is confronted with a newly aggressive MAGA imperialism that has bombed more countries in a single year than any other administration. Some 7 attacks have already occurred, with more on the way, not even counting the strikes against boats in the Caribbean. I don't know, there's several dozen of those. The old post-World War II Cold War alliances are cracking at the seams, rent apart by the now public inter-imperialist rivalries between the main centers of world imperialism, mainly the United States and the European Union, raising the danger of new wars, including the possibility of thermonuclear confrontation. Let us not forget that MAGA's fascist-tinged domestic policy is accompanied by an equally fascist-tinged might makes right foreign policy that seeks to preserve the dominance of white capital. And I use that term deliberately, not only in the United States, but in Europe as well, as clearly seen in Trump's national security strategy. These people are racist to the core, and make no bones about it. You got the Ku Klux Klan in the White House, you know? Neo-Nazis. In these circumstances, the fight for peace is even more important. And today, that means continuing to seek ways to bring our working class and people of color into the fight. It bodes well that the AFL-CIO Executive Council this time around, as compared to what happened during the events in Palestine a couple of years ago, quickly condemned the kidnapping of President Maduro and Celia Flores. And let us not forget that Cuba is in their target sites with the recent tightening of the blockade and declaration of an emergency. The occupation and genocide of Palestine, too, continues and requires renewed efforts on our part. Going forward, building relations with the faith community and the African American church in particular will be extremely important. Comrades, I'm almost done. In June, we will celebrate 2 years since our 32nd convention. And we can be proud that in most districts, we have maintained a steady pace of growth and involvement. Our party and YCL clubs are actively involved in coalition work and have a public presence both in communities and online. And we are so very proud that we made some electoral breakthroughs last November. And again, congratulations to our comrades. We are continuing a steady pace of recruitment and are reaching out to and vetting new applicants far more quickly and better than before. Our ed department is holding a steady pace of Marxist classes. And in a few places, we have study groups, some in person, some hybrid, and the more of that, the better. People's World is continuing its excellent coverage of domestic and international struggles with a clear working class orientation. Good Morning Revolution has maintained its weekly address of key ideological and political developments. That said, we got to confront the fact that our growth, while steady, is not in keeping with the possibilities of the moment. It seemed that we kind of like hit a plateau, but haven't managed to move beyond it. And the National Committee, we got to think about, why is that the case? Consider that since Trump was first elected, we've recruited 20,000 members, and that's great. However, 9,000 of that number are no longer subscribed to our list. We're reaching out to them to find out why. You know, are they receiving too many emails and unsubscribed, or did they unsubscribe accidentally, or have some of them quit? We don't know the answer. We do know that email is not the best way to communicate. Got to use it, but we got to find better means of communication and interaction with our members. But that still don't explain the lack of significant growth. Class struggle is sharpening. You know, class consciousness is growing. Left is growing. The socialist current is deepening. Mamdani is now New York's mayor, along with other socialist elected officials around the country. But we have not yet been able to tap deeply into the socialist moment as it has been expressing itself in the current situation. That's why we have to be more deeply involved in community struggles and out on the streets. And again, we got to take initiative. We will not grow if people don't see us. To me, we got to figure out how to make a splash. You know, it's possible. Our appearance on The Daily Show last fall pointed in that direction. While we figure it out, let us continue to explore new ways to carry on our activity, including emphasizing cultural work. Not as a second thought, not as entertainment, not to fill spaces between agenda points, but as an essential feature of party and YCL work. Comrades, you know, we're going through a very difficult period. I mean, tough, intense, class and democratic struggle, period of storms. And we got to be prepared for what's coming. You know, Gus Hall once said, "We do not fear the storms." We understand that it is precisely in the storms that class and socialist consciousness arises and takes form. It is only through struggle that our class learns and draws conclusion. Our role is to be there side by side with our class siblings. Stand with them, hand in hand, going toe-to-toe with monopoly, and help chart a path through the thunder. We will get through this. And as sure as I'm sitting here today, the clouds will part, the winds will cease, the sun will come back out, and we will emerge with a new party and a new day. Thank you for listening, and let the discussion begin.